We are absolutely rolling. Wonderful.
You know what some interviewers do, and I thought maybe you were doing it for a moment, is they fake a technical issue.
Yeah.
And they keep rolling because they know that certain people, when they're getting interviewed, they just completely
Get
freeze.
nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have you for right now.
That's what you were doing, wasn't it?
No, unfortunately not. She saw me. Did you watch me do tech? I think I restarted it. I re-downloaded the driver that the audio thing picks
you
up
perform
everything.
very well under pressure because most people would have been stressed.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about that today as a concept. How I mentioned gradualness can never happen in time, and that what can occur at a breakdown where there is no time injected into a situation, someone dies like what just happened in the news, or two people yell at each other, cry, or get physical.
Yeah.
So my only goal in life is just to try to inject time into any sort of complex emotional situation so people can digest.
Oh, that's
it
a great
better.
idea.
But we're not interviewing me here. We're interviewing you.
Well, maybe
And
we should, because I really like the sound of that. I haven't got that skill set.
to
at
lead
all.
this off, I read his entire diary and I looked into everything in his life, and he. I'll give you a brief introduction. I'd love to hear you introduce yourself with not a hint of modesty in your voice. But he has published 350 studies, something like 4 have gotten into Nature and 12 have gotten into Science magazine. And you were incredibly fascinated by Jackson Pollock earlier in life, to the point where you painted your fridge and your wife came home and she was maybe not a big fan of it. So yesterday, I've been getting into screen printing. I wore one that had my old design on it, hiking with Ariel today, but this is mine of what I'm screen printing currently.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'll take the chaos theory of the fractal nature of the universe
Yeah.
to it by not having any right or wrong answers. This is supposed to be something that says, I am happy, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am free, I'm loved, I'm balanced, I'm grateful just to be. Just this mantra I thought up of when I've never gotten into TM meditation. But anyways, it only printed the top half a couple times. And I've just started, as I mentioned to you earlier, I've almost found truth or God in the sense that just try to reduce friction from my life and just go with whatever path it takes me in easiest, which is, I think, how you ended your TEDx talk in Portland, was it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. That you need to,
Perfect.
you need to be honest with yourself, right? And I think that too many people do what they think they ought to do, rather than really what they really, really want to do.
And that's it, isn't it?
That's the secret, because, if you do what you really want to do in life, you're going to find that energy. And, whatever you do in life, you're going to get knocked down by some challenges along the way. Mm-hmm. If you found something that you yourself are really, really interested in, that gives you an extra energy to get up and keep on going. If you are just doing something because you've been told to do it, then at some point your time is going to run out. And so that's where life looks after you.
Really? So at what age did you find art and physics? Again, I didn't really introduce you enough. He's the head of the physics department at the University of Oregon with a fundamental basis in fractal design and chaos theory, to the point where you were offered to write, and you maybe even wrote and gave the eulogies of the granddaddy of both of those fields of science. One of them is Mandelbrot. I don't know exactly how to pronounce both of their names.
That's good enough.
But I'm like, you could not be more honed in and keyed into that community, which I have a couple other friends who are into just the fractal nature of the universe.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, if you were to give people just a brief introduction, someone who's never heard of fractals, they've been like, yeah, I've seen cauliflower before. What would you tell them that would grasp them and be like, oh, I should learn more about fractals?
Well, fractals, very simply, are just patterns that repeat at different size scales. So a tree has got big branches, but it's got smaller branches coming off those and smaller branches. Very simple idea, just this repetition. But nature uses it a lot. And so a lot of people refer to it as the fingerprint of nature. And that's what fascinates me. Why is nature, and we can assume that nature is doing well and has got things right, why did nature choose to build all of these things from fractals?
And you've been in the field for 30 years. Do you have any semblance of an answer
years.
on that topic?
No, other than every time I do some research on fractals, well, whatever it is, it comes out with something really useful and something wonderful about it.
If you were to give an example, I don't want to give away your work in terms of carpets and who knows how your work may be used as architecture ad infinitum for the rest of time. If It Lives Forever, which I don't know if you've shown yourself, but to introduce this person really quick behind the DJ mix, this is Ariel Rubin. She is an all-around rock star, and she can introduce herself now if she wants.
Oh, thanks. Hey, I'm excited to be here. My folks own Hummingbird Wholesale, a food manufacturer. We work a lot with organic farmers here in Eugene. And I'm currently the venture catalyst, a rural venture catalyst for Oregon Rain. So I support small businesses across Lane County. So.
And she doesn't know this yet, but I'm eventually going to convince her to be my mentor. No, I'm kidding.
No.
Who knows if that'll ever manifest itself. But I'm like,
I'm excited.
It's so fascinating when you meet minds that have really delved into, as you used the terminology before, just to catch everyone up. We had technical difficulties for, I think that we all had to talk for about 30 minutes while I frantically, I was screaming at both of them. I was on my computer. You mentioned stare into the void, and when you meet people who have been in solitude enough and really formed their core belief system on things such as consciousness continuing, which Ariel brought up earlier, as she thinks there's no end to it, which I find to be more terrifying than the concept of there being an end where we get to drop everything.
But then what you do after you've dropped everything?
Yeah, I don't know. So you're hoping for the transhumanist aspect of reality in terms of removing death and suffering from existence?
No, I deal with reality. I think you've got what you've got, and things come along. I've been, I have to say that I've been very lucky in life, so I've never had to face any major tragedies. So
any?
Not really. I am a very lucky person.
That's what we want to learn.
Yeah.
How do you get that lucky? You got that lucky by following your passion.
Yeah, I think sometimes, when people declare that they're lucky, I think to some extent you make your luck.
Yeah.
And I think some people, I really do believe, and again, within the context that nothing really awful has happened to me, but life, some things happen for no other reason than they happen. And I have noticed that the people who do well in life maximize the impact of the positive things and minimize and move on quickly from the negative things.
And did you reach a point through reading a specific book, meditating? What developed that in your mind where you could you had the acuity to realize that pattern in people? Because you work with patterns. You're a physics guy. You're fractals. You see patterns.
I don't think I certainly didn't read it, and I don't think I'm that good at it either. That I tend to sometimes dwell on defeats a little longer than I would like philosophically.
Yeah.
If I listen to me, because one big thing I would say that I do, right, that it took me a long time to do it, is what does failure mean? So let's say you do 5 things, right? And let's see you succeed at those 5 things.
Yeah.
What that shows is that you've not been challenging yourself enough, that those 5 things were too easy for you. Let's say you do 5 things and all of them fail, then clearly you're doing the wrong thing in life for whatever reason. But let's say you do 5 things and 4 of them you do really well at. Mm-hmm. Then that 5th one, the one that you failed at,
you should focus on that for the rest
of your life.
Well, no,
you should just see it as a consequence of the fact that you got 4 things right.
Yeah.
And if you're setting yourself right, once in a while you're going to fail, and just acknowledge it. Failure isn't disastrous. It's just part of the journey on your road to the success. And I think if people take that attitude in terms of risk, if people are too frightened about that one-time failure, so they never do the 5 things, that's where all of the problems start to arise.
Absolutely. The best metaphor that I've used to kind of internalize that is, Kanye brought it up on Joe Rogan, funny enough. He mentioned, if I put a 2x4 on the ground and I said walk across it, you easily could. But if it was 100 feet up in the air, it might be a new task. You might say, and that's what society does. It would be a conspiracy theory, and I'd never share it, but I almost think that the U.S. government wants and promotes homeless people so that other people see that and say, I don't want to be that. I will go work something that has no connection to my true passion life. I'll hurt my physical body and my mental body in order to avoid. So it's a fear-based reality and existence that they're going through. You managed to escape that paradigm. Were you raised in a non-traditional household? I know you have your ministry of Church of Love or Church of Faith or however that works.
Universal Church of Life. You know way too many things.
Way too much. Really?
Wait, is that the one that does marriage license?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I've married people and I've done funerals.
To adjust you really quick, I'll have you scoot in a little bit toward me so the camera, I guess you're behind it. You know a little bit better, but we don't just want to see half your face the whole time. We want that gorgeous mug. So anyways, what were some of the foundational things that crafted crafted you to be a person who says, I'm willing to take a bet on myself in life because it paid off? You seem very well-adjusted and
That's
conscious.
what you think.
That's what
I was very lucky in that I had parents who genuinely were very supportive and wanted me to do what I really wanted to do. So they never were people saying, "Oh, you should be doing this or that," and that's been really helpful because sometimes in my life, I've been doing a sort of traditional physicist thing, going through that career, and at certain points I've just decided I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go to art school. And I've been very lucky that when that's happened, most people have been very supportive and said, hey, cool, you want to go to art school.
Yeah.
And the only people who've criticized me, I'd say, at times like that, was some people felt that I wasn't taking science seriously enough by going to art school.
Yeah.
When in fact, that wasn't an indication that I wasn't taking science seriously. It was an indication that I was really taking art seriously.
And that society hasn't taken art seriously enough, which is one of your, I think it was 11 years ago, you were working on the field of bridging the gap between science and art.
Yeah.
And how foundational they are in each other, which is where the work of Fractals kind of came about. So what age did you hone into Fractals as the thing that you wanted to learn more and share with the world? Because that's a fascinating field of study.
Well, I think most people know about fractals subconsciously before they realize it, that we're picking up, when we look at trees and clouds and stuff on a subconscious level, all of our research has shown that we do understand them on that automatic level.
Yeah.
I'd say for me, when did I start to study fractals? It was when I was doing my PhD in physics, when I was studying electrical currents going through
So you're
small
28
devices.
or 32 or?
No, God, in England, you really plow through the educational system. So I'd got my PhD when I was 25, so sort of early 20s, which is standard in England.
Wow, I'm turning 24 here, July 7th, 7/7/97. That's almost not a fractal, obviously,
Yeah,
but it's funny to see patterns in nature, patterns in life. A common question that I've heard asked to me is like that. Do you think your name played a role in your life? Especially with my name Tiger, I'm like, well, I can never answer that because my life's been an absolute psychedelic trip thus far, especially with the name Tiger. No one ever forgets me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, this is not fun for laying low, but I'm curious, have you, Richard, I believe you said you're in the Church of Christ or the Church of Divinity before you went to the Universal Church that has no direct lineage to a religion.
Yeah.
But you were named into Christianity.
Yeah.
Has it formed you as a person? And did you read that part of the Bible? Was it a psychedelic experience?
Yeah, so I grew up in a, Church of England Protestant thing where, I'd go to church as a little kid. And so that's kind of there. And so, we were talking earlier about different eras, and I think in that era, traditional religion was the expectation.
Oh, it dominated.
Yeah.
And yet you managed to escape the fear and anxiety-based thinking that people are often consumed with when they grow up in that environment. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Church of England's very sort of interesting religion, and it's not a fire preacher or anything. It's quite,
really?
And it's very liberal.
Nice.
So, the idea of women being priests in the Church of England, it's been going on forever as far as I know. So
I had not a clue.
Yeah,
That's
so I grew up again in a very tolerant environment, whether it was the church or my school or my home life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, everyone knows, right, psychology, when you're growing up, you are forming those networks of neurons which determine
The rest of our
how
lives.
do you react to challenges and how do you react to sadness and things like that.
And so if you were to look at someone, I grew up in a very similar situation where I'm very fortunate to be, but let's say I grew up with an alcoholic in my family and an abuser in my family, so I've been so hard-coded to view life as something to be just wary of people who are emotional, wary of people who want something from me, whereas we currently grew up not in that paradigm. So we're, you could say, free to pursue. I'm pursuing a leveraged medium that could reach 100 million people just as easily as one.
Yeah.
And you're working in a field where the studies that you're publishing could be used literally and built upon. I mean, I think you said you've been cited 67,000 times or 6,700 times.
Yes, maybe 7,000 times.
7,000 times. That's phenomenal. If you looked at the fractal nature in terms of how many times each of those studies were cited maybe by a meta-analysis of some sense. And then you can bring it back to you have made a positive impact on the world by studying and doing what you love. Do you have children, or are you raising them in a way that cultivates that same thing?
No, so I don't have children. I have dogs who I love, and just didn't have kids just because that's what this journey did. I didn't make any decision that I did want kids or didn't have kids.
Yeah. To bring Ariel into this, we prior to the technology magically working, she said that she's on board of not having kids. When I kind of breached the subject of saying a lot of my friends are not looking to do it because of the horrific and horrendous nature of reality that we're currently experiencing. Why aren't you going to have kids?
Oh man, I haven't fully made up the decision. I mean, there is this like wonderful motherly biological instinct, and I would love to nurture and grow beautiful humans, but I'm scared right now. I think just with the outlook of the world and trying to find my place and how to contribute well and be an outstanding human, and am I a good enough example yet also? So I think I'm battling all those.
And
those natural things.
You have a biological ticking time bomb, whereas you could still have kids
He's
today.
cheerful today, isn't he?
Well, it's a fascinating concept to consider in terms of earlier on a walk, we had breached the topic of earlier, or I would say up until a week ago in my life, someone had asked me, hey, do you view men and women as being in an equal spot in life cognitively where they could give back to society to the same extent? And I said, no, in a sexist way, or a misogynist way, but purely based on the conditioning that females have had to go through. I mean, every kid my age was literally told, you can be a president, you can do whatever you want. No one said, be careful on the playground. Nobody. They're like, yeah, go play. You should try out as many things as you could. But there's a lot of women who I've met in my life who have been told, be careful. And just these little subtle things that, as you mentioned, what we input as children strongly affect us. But I think if women were raised to the level they could easily match, and if not go further than men. But it's crazy how long society has had this stranglehold that's been reverberating through generations,
Yeah, and that's the positive thing about this era, right? We're seeing changes relatively quickly now. And so that's one thing that I think your generation is going to see, is all of these, just a greater awareness of, different people in different circumstances, and being more careful about, what your impact is. These little things that you might say subconsciously, huge impact on somebody else.
Have you noticed that in your life? Any sort of like main motifs, or even just recently, if it's more prevalent? And I don't mean to get too personal. If you're just like, let's talk about my work, but because I've had
not
many.
At all.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I mean, so this is a major topic at our university at the moment, right? In terms of, just awareness of, people's lives. So when I grew up at a university, I didn't grow up at a university, but when I went to university, it was just seen, like a physics department was really just seen as a place where you would learn physics. Now we're seen quite rightly as professors are looking after students as they venture through this very valuable phase in their lives, and in any way that we can help them in that mission is good. That it's not just, hey, can I teach Newton's laws to you? But is there any way that I can give you some advice about life and where you're going and things like that? And so those sorts of things, awareness. And I look back on TV programs that I know that I used to watch in the 80s.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that was said was horrendous. But as a little kid, I watched that and just thought, I must have thought, well, that's okay. But it was sexist, it was racist.
Teachers have a huge impact on children. And I mean, everybody really. And I think also we're putting teachers on a pedestal in a way, and we're opening our minds and our consciousnesses to them. So we're downloading maybe a lot more subconsciously as well. You know?
That's a trend that I've noticed. I saw an old picture of a schoolhouse, and maybe I'll add it in post. I'm too lazy. I'm not going to do that. I have enough on my hands. But what it was just one teacher with kids all spread out. And
Yeah.
now technology is at a place where you can find how you want to tune your own consciousness, your own warden of your psyche that makes you feel guilt and say, I want to be happy and healthy. And you can go toward that without someone instilling their morals
Yeah.
and their psychological trauma from childhood upon your child.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think higher education is going in great directions, but I think early education needs a serious remodeling to tell people how to think and how
Yeah.
to be critical
Yeah.
of new input and not letting energy
Yeah.
affect you, you know?
Yeah. So I think, there's many great things that are going to get better and better for, current young kids.
See, you should have kids, Ariel.
Yeah.
You just happen to
Well,
talk to someone.
what I would say about that is that, again, getting back to our earlier conversation, there's a tendency to think, oh, there's just one right direction for me in life, and I better get it right. And it's not true. If you've got energy and you've got talent, you can succeed in many different ways.
That's the most freeing thing I've heard all day. I mean, you'll know how poignant that is to literally the conversation we had hiking earlier today. I'm like, I feel this tremendous weight that there's one direct path,
And there isn't.
and there isn't.
No.
But don't you think that there's a possibility that multiple generations of people feeling that way, that they can always act better later, that's why we're in the mess we are in today? That we all only have the moment, like what's every day is today kind of thing. Like there is no, I'll act better in the future when I'm more stable or when
Yeah.
once I've worked on myself,
Yeah, but I still think, there's lots of opportunity in life. Let's say you did 5 years of really bad things. Lots of great ways to redeem yourself and go on and do great things.
And that's something that was hard-coded into you growing up within a church, is that you can never stray too far where you can't come back again, right?
Well, that's that religion. I think Church of England that I grew up with was just be a nice person.
That's so cool. I mean, we all need more of that in life. That's what I'm starting to think of. So do you find that in your daily life, you and I don't mean to stay on faith in God too long. We can
Yeah.
talk about physics and math, but they're pretty close. They're all almost interchangeable terms. The more
Yeah.
you learn about truth, the more you're learning about
Yeah.
fractals, physics, math,
Yeah.
the whole lot of it.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself when you're studying and getting ready to publish a paper, do you find synchronicities occurring, a deeper level of consciousness that reflects back upon you since you're the researcher studying it? Do you find this almost metacognition of like, whoa, did I put that in there, or is it just reflecting what I'm trying to look for?
Oh, there's so many interesting questions in there, right? I mean, I think the thing why I think any research, whether it's science or whatever it is really fascinating, and it's a privilege, is that you are finding out something potentially about life that no one has ever found out before. And that's quite a privilege.
Absolutely.
Whether it's you as a humanities professor reading some old scroll and putting something together, or it's a scientist moving atoms around in the way that they've never been. That sort of voyage of discovery. And that's what I like as a scientist, is that almost like detective story that is out there and you've got to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it gets exciting, when you start to sense that the story's coming together, that you're getting close to the truth.
Absolutely.
Because at the start it's all over the place and you've got a hypothesis or something, but it could be right or it could be wrong.
I'll have you bring that a little bit closer. I just want to make sure you're held so clear. And so with that in mind, it's funny that you said you're 56 now, not to date
God,
you.
almost 50. That was like 10 minutes ago. I'm 57 now.
57 now. And you said that once you turn 60, you'll be an artist, because you describe yourself as a scientist, which is fascinating terminology.
Yeah.
If deep down you are an artist, you don't say any sort of middle ground of the two. So I'm curious if your move toward fractals and chaos theory, I believe you sent electrons through with an interfering thing. Are you heading toward viewing chaos, looking into the void of the chaos of nature, and what are you trying to pull back from that and share with people, if anything? I don't want to.
Yeah, no, it's great, because until you actually said it back to me, I don't think I've actually really thought that I'm declaring myself a scientist, because I'm meant to be known for no boundaries whatsoever, and yet here I am saying it. But I do think that, you know, the thing why I think I think any research, whether it's science or whatever it is really fascinating, and it's a privilege. Whether it's you as a humanities professor reading some old scroll and putting something together, or it's a scientist moving atoms around in the way that they've never been. That sort of voyage of discovery. And that's what I like as a scientist, is that that you are defined a little bit by what you're actually doing right now.
Absolutely.
And I am a scientist, or although I walk to the edge to collaborate with the psychologists, I am at the moment a physicist collaborating with a psychologist, or a physicist collaborating with a human physiologist, or whatever it is. But when I went to art school, I really was fresh and an artist.
Yeah.
But it never leaves you, right? Because I'm a physicist doing physics, but in my past I've been an artist, and so it does change you.
Absolutely.
But what I meant by the 60 is I think that as my day job, I might well just decide that I'm going to build these big wind machines that are going to paint nature's motion rather than building a bionic eye.
And much like you mentioned, just to bring people back into the conversation, you're speaking about a Burning Man type vehicle that travels due to wind with multiple 20 or 50 legs that all kind of move in unison.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. So have you been to Burning Man?
Well said. That captures it beautifally, actually.
Have you been to Burning Man? Have you
I
experienced...
haven't. I have many friends who have been to Burning Man.
Yeah. Are you at a place, stability of tenure, where you can speak about the exogenous implications of serotonin elevation, like taking something like DMT, and if not, I can hop off that and delete that part of the interview even.
So I'm not there because that's nowhere near my speciality.
It seems like someone looking at fractals, which is like the number one thing that becomes overwhelmingly apparent when, I'll just use myself as an example, when I take psychedelics. I mean, you can't look away from it. As much as you try, you turn the lights off and now the darkness has become fractal.
Yeah, so fractals definitely have a special relationship with humans, right? That's even clear before you get onto drugs, right? That there's a whole movement called biophilia that says that humans have this intrinsic need to be connected with nature. Mm-hmm. And if you think that we've grown up through millennia being surrounded by these fractal patterns, then there is going to be, in some sense, we're kind of hardwired to look at these things. So when you look at them,
and what exactly biologically would have hardwired us? Like a fruit that's more in a better shape or proportion, like would it draw us better and have more like that doesn't make any sense to me. So what exactly about it? And I'll have you sit here and face me. Again, I want you looking really good in that camera.
Sorry,
Ignore her. Pretend like she doesn't exist for now. I know. We all just want comfort in life. So what would have hardwired that in? And just really quick before we delve into this, I want you to look at the time and be cognizant of it, and let me know if
no problem. I'm okay.
Cool. And you as well, because I can take over that.
Yeah.
So again, what purpose does fractals bring into us? Because the study that actually reached out to you, it was one of your most recent. It was put on Reddit, and it was about how children as young as 6 or 9, two, children as young as 2, when looking at nature, it doesn't upregulate their dopaminergic system, but it elevates their mood in some facet. Did you work with the psychology department to figure out the exact biochemistry of it?
So we were doing behavioral studies, where you ask people things. But we have done, MRI studies that look at which part of the brain get activated, and EEG, which look at sort of time variations in the brain. And, in EEG studies where, they put little electrodes on your head so they can detect what's going on in the brain, there is this wave called an alpha wave, and that peaks when you are wakefully relaxed, and it peaks when you meditate. And when you stare at fractal patterns, the alpha waves do peak. So it does go beyond a sort of, if you'd say, a sort of behavioral aesthetics, and it starts to affect your physiology.
It definitely is deeply
does.
Pleasing. To see that, it's just like so meditative.
Yeah, that
and
feeling, when you look out at nature and you feel that, ooh, that is your body relaxing.
And so, with this in mind, do you live in a city or do you live out in the countryside with nature to view it at any angle?
Yeah. So the great thing about what we're doing, called human-centered design, which you'd think would be obvious, but not all architects do it. If you look at this building, it's pretty functional. It's not really looking at the occupants that much.
No, not at all.
And so if you go for human-centered design, you've got to respect that there's a lot of variation in the human beings.
Yeah.
So some people might like, that this drive that we've just been talking about, this relaxation might be really important to you. Then no doubt right now you want to be going out into nature. If there's something more important to you right now that's more important.
So how to make a room more relaxing? No windows. No
Yeah,
windows at all.
yeah.
You want a dark room.
Well, yeah, I mean, so there are many different people with many different needs just based on looking out at nature to do with
Yeah.
what complexity levels they can handle.
Absolutely. I'm going to mute that. Sorry. I was being facetious when I was saying you want a dark room. You were saying me looking out. So, like, I try to not get distracted and stay very present in the moment when I'm talking to you. I might glance at that bush to up my alpha waves, to get a little life hack in there,
Yeah.
and then look
Yeah.
right back at you more present and
Yeah.
aware to ask the next question. But I guess to make your life really difficult here for a second, if you were to sum up your entire life's work into one sentence, what would it be? And I'll give an example while you think. Some people say Infinite Jest is this great, fascinating book, and I'm like, well, what is it? It's like, it's about how bad communism and how good capitalism is. I'm like, well, if it could be summed up that much, I think a lot of people can sum up bigger aspects of their life than they give credit for. So I'm curious, like how a bite-sized comment, maybe even for the title of this, like, what's your goal? What are you doing? What are you happy to have achieved?
Oh, that's simple. So my goal in life is just to have a very positive impact on people.
That's what I'm dealing with. That's what I was talking to her about today. I'm like, it's an unbelievable, almost psychological trauma to deal with the concept of like, oh, I have to improve this place or it's going to get worse because we're all, like the world's made up of all of us. So.
See, I don't see it that way. I don't see it as you have to do this or you have to do that.
Then what would motivate you to
conscious
improve it?
Well, in a selfish way, right? I think that what
Honest.
happens
Yeah.
to you is, when you do something good to somebody that you didn't have to, you get that warm feeling.
Yeah.
If you shaft somebody in a way that you didn't have to, you get that horrible feeling.
Absolutely.
And I just like those positive, warm feelings that you get. And I think that that's what spirituality is in the end, about looking after people. It means something that you get this good feeling when you look after people, and you don't get it when you don't.
Yeah.
And that means that I think that if you get rid of the stress in people, fundamentally, they want to get on with each other.
Is that
Yeah.
how some way related to physics and fractals?
Yeah. And that's the physicist's view of life.
Yeah, really quick, a fascinating way that literally ties to not quite my heart, but right here, the screen print didn't turn out perfectly, but it says, nothing matters, but it feels good to do good. Because
Yeah.
that's one of the most foundational truths that I've found to guide my life by.
Yeah.
I can't say any of this matters for sure. As soon as you die, it might be like when you woke up this morning and you wouldn't turn to your partner and say, I really hoped all those people in that dream really did well and liked me, and I made an impact in that dream world. You'd be like, who cares? I'm going to go do this, For all we know, that's what happens when our consciousness reaches the end of this physical existence. So I'm
Yeah.
like, we don't know anything matters, but for some reason, it feels good to do good. Earlier today, she sparked a radical shift in my worldview today. I said, this morning I woke up at 8 a.m. and hiked Spencer's Butte with her, and I said, my goals are to be healthy, happy, and wealthy. So just health, physical health, mental health, and financial health, and uplift everyone around me. And now she's kind of questioned a couple aspects of that, and I like having deeply held beliefs, but firm or loosely held. Like, be willing to switch them up often. And I've shifted it to, okay, well, if the only thing that's real in reality is suffering, let's just reduce suffering. Let's find whatever path we can to all reduce suffering. So do you feel that in your work, because you're a very happy, joyous person, so you must derive some pleasure from your work. Do you think that there is a distant date or a current date where fractals reduce suffering? And I know you're partially working on this with carpets. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah.
And where it extrapolate out to.
Yeah. So it's all about reclaiming what we had as human beings, that we're meant to be out there in nature. Right. Now, we can't. We've got jobs. We can't just wander out into the forest all day. So can you learn from it, and can you bring it into the work environment or even your home environment? Mm-hmm. And so that's what we want to do, is learn from nature, bio-inspiration, figure out what is it out there that reduces your stress levels. Can we bring it into a room like this?
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. And I've been very lucky. I work with these two amazing designers in Austria, who are very famous designers, and then we teamed up with a flooring manufacturer, Mohawk, and so we've now got these what we call relaxing floors, which are carpets designed to reduce your stress levels.
Absolutely. And what I perceived it to be is a bunch of triangles of varying densities. And
Oh, they're amazing. You should have
are
a look
they?
at them.
I would love to. Is it in a place nearby where we can go
Well,
see
yeah.
it?
So here's the next amazing thing. So, these carpets were launched 2 years ago, and we did really well. They won a lot of awards because of this whole science-informed design. But, they cost a lot of money. They're designed to go into, like, the night campus at the University of Oregon. But then the pandemic struck, and we realized, well, there's a lot of people getting stressed. So in a couple of weeks, the patterns that we developed for the carpets are actually going to be released as free screensavers for your computers.
Fine.
As a sort of humanitarian gesture.
How about this? How about I print it out and I make a sweatshirt of it and I give it to you next time I see you?
So the only clause is it's got to be for your own personal use, and so you can do what you like with it.
Yeah, and again, just so everyone knows, I literally made this today. I didn't even put
Yes,
my
nice.
logo on it. So I did 113 episodes of a show called Talks with Tiger. I'm considering just putting all those in the archive and starting a show that just says Talks with. If I'm not here, Ariel, and if there's a third person here, like, any four people should just be having conversations that try to root out truths that we can then live our lives by to improve ourselves and our community, if that's possible. She's trying to debate that I shouldn't ever change people, and I'm not trying to put words in her mouth. I think it's a valid argument. I'm curious what side of the coin you fall on in terms of if you saw me smoking cigarettes right now or drinking. Do you think do you have any impetus upon you?
Well, just to clarify, I just feel like it's not possible to directly change people unless you're leading by example. Like, I don't think I can just go out and frickin' change people. Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to,
You're in a place where I'd respect you, though. That's the foundational reason of the first 113 episodes I'd always bash on therapists. I'm like, none of them are people who I look up to. Like, they're not financially, physically, and mentally healthy. Why would I respect them to? Obviously, my opinion's changed somewhat. It's more nuanced at this point. But you're someone who I would view and respect. So if someone listening or myself is receptive to being changed, what would you tell your 23-year-old self?
Oh, so that's very true. And we were talking about that before, about the privilege of being a teacher or whatever. I mean, there's nothing more rewarding than you get an email one day from a student from 15 years ago. And they send the email and they say, I hope you don't mind me getting in touch with you, but I just want to tell you that 15 years ago you gave this great course. And I think, what do you mean, I hope you don't mind? Because reading that one email and realizing that you had that impact on somebody.
Yeah.
I would, so when I give lectures, I don't turn up smoking and with a bottle of vodka.
But if
to set that.
do you have a partner in life? Do you have a person who you spend time with a lot?
So I'm, really happily married.
Beautiful. And if they picked up a bad habit of binge drinking, would it then be upon you to change them? So you should change. You're responsible to change for yourself. And so you just said if you can, so you're responsible to change the person closest to you. So are we just supposed to pair bond off in nature, or to what extent is it everyone in the communities?
I think you again, within the, God, sounds like so scientific, within the parameters of the experiment or whatever.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right that there are ways that you can do it and ways that you can't do it.
I walk up to people with a gun and I'm like, read this book, and it's The Greatest Salesman in the World by Augmentine.
Yeah.
Works every time.
Works every time.
I do believe that the old cliche, I think the carrot is better than the stick.
Absolutely, especially with, I guess you wouldn't be this field, but raising kids has been a motif she brought up last time you were on the show, and I'm going to divert your attention to her for a little bit, the hot seat.
Let's do it.
If you say you can't necessarily change people, when we spoke, I spoke highly of the book Total Freedom by Krishnamurti, which you've now read, and I happen to be literally rereading at the moment and coming to a lot of these conclusions. So what about me made it so you would take advice from me? And in retrospect, she told me about something called the 7 school teacher lessons, all about how absolutely horrific and how much it turns your own mind into your warden, where you should always feel guilty and you feel like you should be productive. And if you have any fun, like you enjoy painting, how are you going to monetize that? And that's what's leading to an increase in people my age killing themselves. But aside from that, you actually ended up reading a very difficult book off the recommendation of someone you'd only met once. So if it's not my impetus, or it's not my job to change the community around me, why'd you get the book?
Well, I'm a seeker, and I'm always interested, and, this just went black.
Oh, that's fine.
It's back.
Beautiful.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a seeker and I'm always interested in learning. And so, I met you and I just found you super interesting, and it sort of led me along my own essential bias, right? Like, I'm a seeker and I'm curious and oh, thanks.
Just if you weren't on it.
I'm here. Yeah, and I'm always looking for, expansive thinking, and that's what gives me the most joy and excitement and passion, is to expand my thinking. And so, meeting someone who was as interesting as you, Tiger, I was just like, okay, cool, I'm excited. Like, let's see where this leads.
Yeah.
But you didn't force me, and you didn't necessarily change me. I mean, of course, I interacted with you, and it was super inspiring, but I was also already going in that direction. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I would say
So-
you radically changed my direction. I think
Really?
multiple people have pivoted me 180 in life. I mean, literally getting that greatest salesman in the world book pivoted my life to such a 180. I confided in you earlier, I'd taken Kratom, which is non-opiate, but it affects the same neuro. If it looks like it walks and it talks like an opiate, it's practically an opiate for about 4 years. And then I'd been taking something that acts on the GABA B receptor, similar to a benzodiazepine. So I was really relaxed and unanxious and warm and fuzzy. And I got that book, and it was all about removing bad habits from your life, creating good habits, and just understanding that if I'm chasing dopamine, easy, quick, feel good right now, that's not going to help me out in life, because all I have is, I don't know. It went really far, but pretty much it pivoted. Within a 1 week span, I pretty much said, okay, I'm done taking stuff, and I'm done just being some person who plays like video games, not to call anyone out or like wastes quote unquote my time. But it radically 180 pivoted me, and that was on the recommendation of someone.
This is interesting. It's definitely, looking back in my life, there are people that have radically changed my direction and my thinking. So I'll have to amend my thought process on this. But
It's a fascinating
I guess
concept.
when I'm moving forward in my life, I'm not necessarily going forward to try and change people. And when I, for instance, try and change my partner, it never works. But when I change my own self in that relationship, then things just like magically unfold and happen.
Interesting. I'll say
So-
for myself, that's where strife has come. What about you? When you die to yourself of yesterday and you become a new man, and you bring that new man to your partner, is she always warm and accepting, even if you if you said you wanted to shave your hair tomorrow and you wanted to just start drinking beer all the time, like would she just have a radically warm and open, accepting lovingness, or would she would it cause some friction? So I'm like, to some extent, society and school has also taught us never change. Whatever you do, stay the exact same. That's what I want.
Is that right?
That's what I've gotten from it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, no, I agree with everything you say. I mean, I don't get up in the morning and say I'm going to change people. But I never have that. I never have this thing, I mustn't change.
You say you don't wake up wanting to change people, but you said the highlight of your day is receiving an email from 15 years ago of someone you've changed.
Oh, learning that I've changed somebody, but, it's not that I don't think I got up that morning when I gave that lecture with this idea that I'm going to do something where 15 years later someone's going to remember it.
That's the way I'm living right now. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I have not said a lot.
Those sorts of things, you put a lot of pressure on yourself.
Absolutely.
And
that's when people burn out, like you had mentioned, is the number one thing to avoid. But another way of looking at it was I'm sure you're consciously doing your job. You've obviously reached great heights that I may never reach in life, which I respect. I mean, seriously, you have made it. From the vision of a 23-year-old who's looking at it, like, I view that as success. Do you think you were unconsciously programming people if you went into it saying, "Oh, I'm not changing anyone's life"? Like, shouldn't we I'm doing this podcast right now. I should cognitively be like, I shouldn't just be talking about everyone here should just watch all this horrific stuff and talk mad at people and yell at people, because I'm aware and cognizant of the impact I have on people. When I put a podcast on, I'm like, sick. I'll have someone else think for me for an hour, and then I put a podcast on, and I'm downloading that information, which then finds its way out to you.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if people should be living more consciously, or how you got to where you are. Did you avoid that path, and that's how you didn't get burnt out?
So, if you just look about what you said, if only I could be clever enough to not move the mic.
That's golden, yeah.
This genius who's made it in life can't quite speak into a microphone. If you think back to what you just did a few minutes ago and say in one sentence, summarize your life.
Yeah.
And then think about the stress that you've got to get those words together in that sentence.
That's why
as
I tried to give you
opposed to if you'd have said, speak for half an hour, and somewhere in that half an hour you're going to say something really clever. That's the way we operate, right? And you get up and there's an awful lot happens in a day and there's an awful lot happens in a week. And if mostly you get it right, then you're going to have that positive impact. You're going to get into really hard times if you think about every single action that you do.
We were mentioning this earlier, the concept of a signal-noise ratio, which it sounds like you're alluding to at least.
Yeah.
So I've tried to cut out as much noise as possible and be as much of a signal as I can. Like just reading literally, it was a Reddit thread with maybe 100 likes on some small subreddit that I've been following. I'm like, oh, he's here in Eugene, Oregon, and he's studying something that I find profoundly fascinating.
Yeah.
That I was so tried to tune in to just pure. You would say when you make a study, you take hundreds or thousands of hours, if you're including your minions' work's time, and you condense it into, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 words?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
So you have to condense all that noise and signal. You have to cut it out. Like you said in conversation, that's my goal, is to take 30 minutes of conversation and cut it down to 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah. It's difficult.
In terms of what you produce, that's true, but the other thing that we touched on earlier is just the joy of doing it. What if I just took that manuscript and deleted it? There was still some happiness in getting to it and doing it, right? I think.
Yeah.
Like, getting back to my running thing, I'm fascinated with running because I enjoy it and hardly anybody else does, and I can understand intellectually why they don't. Why would you find that? And so I used to run for my university, and I wasn't an Olympic athlete or anything, but I got really good. But I would go out for these runs and push myself really hard, and then I'd go home and I'd never tell anybody how fast I'd run, because the joy was just in the running.
Yeah.
And it really didn't matter at all to me whether anybody else knew about it or not. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that you've got to celebrate in life. If you are doing something where only the outcome matters and you get no joy out of the journey on the way to that outcome, then I think you should pick something else where you enjoy both the journey and the outcome.
Yeah. I've been doing my best lately to just start living my life. I wrapped it to Ariel, but a song that I've been getting really into called Follow God by Kanye is lifelike. This is what your life's like. Try to live your life right. People really know you push your buttons like a typewriter. This is like a movie, but it's awfully very lifelike. It just kind of goes on. But the first line of that, lifelike, this is what your life's like. That's it. Someone's been like, this is your life. If you're in a scenario, you should either try to avoid it in the future or enjoy it. So I've just been like, if I'm washing dishes or if I'm whatever I'm finding myself doing, I'm like, well, I must like this because I'm doing this, because I'm setting the parameter in your terminology of I don't do something I don't enjoy. And I obviously had to get there through years of developing financial and mental and physical freedom and health.
Yeah.
But now that once you're at that point, it's like, then you can almost find enjoyment and intrinsic value, to use kind of the line that the thread you're going along, in anything. So now my top concern becomes, how can I get the most output for the least amount of input?
Yeah, that's why you're going to get super stressed when you start thinking about things like that.
Yeah, that's what I want to learn from you. I see you and I say, how can I reach my goals in life without being the person who had to stress and try really hard? I want to be in a position where you are with different goals, but equally as successful in terms of reaching goals and being in a place where you teach and impact other people's lives positively. I see that as something where I'm like, I respect a lot of the values you've embodied as a young person and made happen. So I'm
glad you see me in this way, but you've got to remember that I'm 30 years older, and that's an awful lot of days to do something fantastic with, and I'm confident that you will be as magnificent as I am when you get to 57.
Well, it's fun. No one ever talks themselves up. If anyone in the world can talk themselves up, it's someone who's published so many papers, and you just because if you can't, what hope do I have? I've been really trying to internalize the concept that.
Well, I actually don't think so. I don't know whether if I go back to 23 or 24, I don't think I was as reflective as you are now.
It's hell. No, I'm kidding. I really enjoy it. I find so much.
It can be though.
It can be.
It can be.
But it's an enjoyable one.
Analysis paralysis.
Paralysis.
What I would say is this: is the great people in life well, I think I've used that phrase before about, the people who maximise positivity, and that's definitely true. But I think that the great people in life also tend to be opportunists, that they see something come along and they think, I like that, and that's what I'm going to do. They see the opportunity. They don't second think it. They don't go, I wonder if this is too good or not.
Yeah.
And they've done some preparation in their lives, maybe not consciously and maybe not structurally, but they, through their interests, have gained some wisdom, where at the time it might not have been, well, why am I gaining this wisdom? There's no point to it. But then 7 years later, that little wisdom that they gain, something comes along in life and boom, and they can go for it.
That's funny. That's such a romanticized view of life that I think I've developed from watching movies and TV shows, which always connect the dots. But I've found my life having surprisingly an amount of threads that get lost, and I'm curious if they come back. Have you noticed that the primary threads in your life have all came back?
You think they've got lost, but they haven't.
That's beautifully joyous to hear. I like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it really is true, right? Life is complicated. There are lots of complexities, and you can't...
Chaos.
Yeah, and you can't quantify and steer at that level. You're going to get knocked around a lot, and it's more the big currents, and you just got to, when you find the right current, just go with it and don't swim in the other direction. And so it's not that kind of intellectual thing, plotting of, I've got to get this right or I've got to get this right. It's, whoa, I really like the look of that.
Yeah.
But I also wonder, I know millennials are really driven by sort of doing good, or that our careers need to mean something. We can't just go to work and then go home and then have the rest of our life. Our careers need to really mean something.
Especially with COVID, where our work comes home to us with our phones. As I imagine you deal with that a lot, as the work you do blends the line between friendship and work. If you were to take me on as a mentor, that would be a blurred line, especially because your phone's with you potentially all the time, I mean, for me, it's on my wrist.
Elaborate. I don't know if I'd be the best mentor.
I don't need a mentor in life. I'm just kidding. I enjoy flattering people and no follow through. Only empty gestures. No, I'm kidding.
But don't you think that is the burden of your generation? Unfortunately, the world and its development has placed you in that position where now you feel obliged, maybe looking at the previous generations, to say, oh my goodness, I've got to combine these things. My generation was far more, I've got to earn some money.
But no, that's us too.
To eat food.
Well,
but it was never
from
consciously.
A young age, people would tell me, you got to fix this, and this is on you. That was very.
See, my generation didn't have that. It was more, it'd be cool to design a fantastic aeroplane, but it wasn't because it's got to save the planet.
Yeah. Here you had here's plentiful bounty. Enjoy it. Just make some money.
Yeah.
Pass along some knowledge. So I really want to dive into an interesting concept that you could, if I don't take this and run, someone listening who's equally as interested in the field as I am will. So you mentioned luck is where preparation meets opportunity, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so there's actually a couple different kinds of luck. One's blind luck, just random lottery number. 2 is hustle luck, or when you put in the work and then an opportunity shows up. Number 3 is called specialization luck, where someone like you has developed such an expansive knowledge of fractals, chaos, physics. I assume math's involved in physics. I don't know that much. And then if an opportunity comes up that someone's hustling, still doesn't reach that new field, but you have the foresight from being at the top of the mountain to see a new opportunity that could either help people, make someone money, or someone may enjoy working on. But maybe you're at a place where you don't, you'd be spreading yourself too thin if you pursued it. Is there something that you think would be seriously awesome if someone pursued, but you don't want to pursue?
Well, that's a great question. Let's just go back one about, because there's a lot of debate in life about the specialist versus the generalist.
Yeah.
And should you learn a lot about one thing, or should you, what you said, spread yourself thin? And if you look at what I am, I appear to be a generalist, right? Oh my God, he studied Jackson Pollock, he's doing bionic eyes, he's talking about human physiology and blah, 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 right?
Designing carpets.
Designing
everywhere,
carpets,
teaching
right?
people.
It just appears like I'm doing everything. In fact, I'm not. I'm just doing one thing. I have this speciality in fractal patterns, but I put that in my little suitcase and I walk to all of these different disciplines and collaborate with people who know a lot about those things.
And so, you being at the pinnacle of fractals, what field do you see that fractals could be incorporated with? like I would say e-commerce found the part of Craigslist where people are renting out their houses, and Airbnb was formed because someone had the expertise of one of those fields and they saw it and combined it, and that was a form of luck. Do you see anything on the horizon of fractals that you think might be really worth pursuing, but might be too big of an endeavor for you to take on, or you're just not?
Oh yeah, great question. So, you know, the bionic eye project is beautiful, and just the simplicity of it and the obvious.
Sounds really simple.
Well,
Bionic
yeah,
eye.
yeah. On
Like,
one
that's the
level
most
it
complex
is,
thing ever.
Yeah, and you can make things as complicated as possible. But you know, you open up a computer and the electronics all looks in a certain way. It's straight lines and whatever. Open up the body and you look at your body's neurons, the wiring, and it's not like that at all, right? So now you think, well, okay, what if I have to develop some electronics to interface with the human body?
Yeah.
Then to me, I say, well, why would you design the electronics that looks like that? Because that's not designed to interact with a human being. Why don't you look at the body's wiring, the neurons, and use that architecture for your circuit? And that's what our fractal electronics is, that all of the nerves in your body are fractal. So if we're going to interface with it, we should make our electronics fractal.
Does it get to a point where the distance between two nodes is shorter than like the distance of an electron once you get down to what, 4 nanometers or something?
Yeah, so actually the human body works at a much larger scale.
Oh, so you don't run into that
We did
problem.
nanoelectronics because we wanted to cram as much into a computer. The wiring in the body is all on the micron scale.
Oh, so you have room to spare.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it's the shape rather than the size that's really important. But there's no way, that's a really clever idea. And so what I just want to make sure in the coming years is that I publish enough to get the basic idea out there, but somebody else will take that idea and run with it and
That's
build
exactly
and
what I was
restore vision
hoping.
and
And so you have studies out, someone could look into you, and because I got to admit, I clearly researched you last night and this morning before we met, and most of the things I found were videos from 6 to 12 years ago. And there was no like a really digestible way to like learn everything about fractals.
Maybe if you look at my website, there's lots of movies from recent times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I'll have to look more into that.
Yeah, but I think the bionic eye thing is great. I think though the thing that I will see in my time is these stress-reducing fractal patterns.
Have you paused and ever considered the phrase that like, well, blind people deserve it, we shouldn't help them? I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, so a more interesting thing that I had to be careful about as I got into this field is so that these I call them, we call them bionic eyes in the field. They're called retinal implants, and they are designed more for people who have diseases of the eye. And so there's diseases like macular degeneration.
You said a quarter of us, all of us, develop it, right?
So
that's horrific.
Yeah, so one of us in this room will go blind before we die because we'll get the disease. That's the statistic. And the problem is that we spend all of our lives relying on vision and then get it taken away. But there are people who are born blind, and that is fundamentally a part of who they are. And you've got to be very careful that they may not want to take one of these bionic eyes, because that will change who they are. So you have to be very respectful of who your audience
We're
is.
really coming back to the fact of changing people. And can you change someone to the point where someone's blind and you can offer them vision and they may say no? Okay, well, you know what? That in itself, that argument convinced me that I should stop trying to change people. If there are blind people out there who say, I don't want to see, there's clearly people out there who don't have a similar
if it's
goal.
a blind person smoking a cigarette, you can take their cigarette out of their mouths and change them that way.
Yeah. It's just a fascinating concept of whose fault is it for the predicament that the world's in, and whose fault is it to improve it. And I'm just feeling like, it's everyone's fault, and I'm part of everyone. So I just extrapolate out, and it gets to a place where I found the fractal nature of my interactions have a reverberation effect upon everyone in the community and almost the world at large. And so I'm just starting to be hyper vigilant and aware of words that I say, whereas I used to be someone, as I said, when I was taking substances, I was completely numbed out to what I was saying, where I wasn't in tune.
But you've also got to, and it's so easy for me to say, but you don't want to become too bland either. There is some value for being a little bit provocative.
Yeah.
You should care about people and things.
this is me being provocative. Normally, and Ariel will back me up on this. Normally, I just wear all tan. I used to not wear a single lick of jewelry.
You can do a splash of orange and go.
Splash of orange. So anyways, I've started kind of embodying that concept of like, I went bland for about a year and a half of my life, and now I'm like, I want to do something. I'd rather speak and be corrected than just sat in silence the whole time, you know? Like that learning
I
and
think
developing.
if you worry too much about something and overthink something, then you will get that paralysis of not.
Or it comes into manifestation and it happens. I mean, the most common phrase is I've had 10,000 troubles in my life and only 2 or 3 of them became real. But, you know, just because we just literally, it's all in our heads.
Virtual worry, yeah.
You said you've never experienced, and we've been going for about an hour, so I just want to be cognizant of everyone's time.
Yeah, I'm okay for the moment.
Beautiful. You mentioned you've never experienced any sort of extreme stress or trouble in life. So are your folks still alive, or like?
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, like mid-80s.
How has your relationship to your folks
Oh.
shifted as you've gone into 56 or 57 years old?
I don't think it's changed really. I think I'm the same relationship that I had when I was a young kid.
They could tell you to do the dishes or something, you'd just be like, okay, yeah. Really? That's so funny. That's an interesting concept. Have you had, as you become 30, this is a pinnacle point in your life. I think 29 is the biggest age where people either run marathons, kill themselves, go skydiving. It's the 9s, 29, 39, or all of them.
Oh, yikes. I didn't know that.
Yeah, fascinating.
Get ready. Yeah. How many hours have you got left?
I have like 50 some days left.
Okay, so you've got to run a marathon, jump out of an airplane.
Yeah, let's hope you don't make the last one. Play Russian roulette with no. But has your relationship with your parents shifted as you've definitely grown into adulthood? Like I would say, when you're 30, you're pretty much a full-grown adult. But when you're 21, you're not. We just blame people.
I don't know about 30 being a fully grown adult.
So when would it be? When is someone accountable for their actions, if ever? Society says 18. I say at least 25. Keeps me off the hot seat, you know?
I mean, your neurons have not fully, you've definitely not fully formed as a human being when you go to university.
Oh, yeah. Even at my age right now.
Sorry, I keep on missing. It's this guy that can't
So then you're one. Yes.
There we go.
It's fun. See, I'm getting her hooked on the tech side of things because you realize you're like the
I'm
power of
loving
your
it.
fingertips. You can do anything, which is just an
Yeah.
absolute joy.
Yeah.
But I don't mean to get derailed. I was talking to both of you about your relationships with your parents because apparently it's that intimate of a show. But it's just a fascinating thing that I've noticed. I don't know. Relationships with parents are the most interesting thing, especially because you're living a life where you're currently not having kids, so you don't see it fractal off into how you...
So you don't see it down the line.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying I've not changed. I did lots of horrible things when I was a little kid.
Really? You go to jail?
Well, not things like that. But I would, I don't know if they have them anymore, but chemistry sets, where they had test tubes and things with chemicals, and they had a little book, and are you meant to mix this with that, and so I'd get that as like a Christmas present or something, and I'd just wait until they'd gone out, mix all of them together in one tube and blow it up, things like that.
That's not evil. That's what everyone should be doing.
Yeah, no, everyone should be doing.
I thought you were going to be like torturing animals or something.
No,
Keep it to yourself.
although I did. I had this guinea pig who I loved, Toby, and I used to do all, like I'd build him parachutes and things like that. So I'd take him off the top of the building and throw him down in his parachute, and it all worked out aerodynamically.
Really?
But Toby was a very brave guinea pig.
Lucky guinea pig, really well. That's interesting. You're honing into the genesis of science, which is Rene Descartes. He'd cut open dogs and stuff. Yeah, you're really tuning from a young age.
Yeah,
into science.
so that was probably my best scientific period when I was like 9 or 10. I was doing all sorts of things like that.
Let's say you lose all your credibility and your CV goes blank tomorrow. Do you go back into fractals and science and nature? Do you think you could make it with just the knowledge you have but without the connections you have? It's a fascinating concept to be like, where are you in life?
No, because I think fundamentally, we're dealing with many things. We're dealing with sexism and racism and whatever, and I don't think we've even scratched the surface of ageism.
Oh, absolutely, that's a real thing. I hate old people. I'm kidding.
So yeah, old people, like me, are terrible, and
Yeah.
we just get by because we've got these great resumes.
Yeah, I think
you get rid of my resume, and no one's going to employ me.
Well, more or less, I was just asking if you were a fresh person right now,
Yeah.
would you go travel and enjoy life, or do you derive that much enjoyment out of researching the fractal nature of the universe and consciousness that you would still dive head first into it again?
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure if you just, whatever, you could wipe me clean and go again, I wouldn't be doing fractals. There'd be something else.
And
yeah.
what would you be into? Have you ever had like a temptress, like I guess art was your big thing that led you away from physics for a while?
Yeah, I've always been, I think I've always enjoyed that creativity business. And to me, it didn't really matter what it was in, whether it was science or art. Just because I love music so much, I've always been a bit puzzled about myself that I never became a musician.
Yeah.
Because I like that more. I personally like music more than I like art.
Really?
So I don't know why. Why did I take a degree in art theory? It's because at that time I was really interested in it.
You could still be a musician,
Yeah. No, I kind of.
though. The ukulele is real easy. I can teach you.
Yeah, or I was just joke with my wife. What I could do is get one of those massive heavy metal drum kits and just
I have
when I'm 60, do that.
That's
instead.
awesome.
It'd be fun. So let's go to make believe land for just a minute here. You get to go back and meet your 20, 23, 25-year-old
Yeah.
self, and you get to hand him like a book or just a note card that says something on it that says, "Don't pursue art, pursue music," or you should hone into fractals as early as possible. Would you have anything that you get 30 seconds in the past, or would you say just enjoy life?
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't do anything like do this or do that. I would probably say don't worry.
Be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
I could sing it even.
Yeah.
But I think that's it. I think that I present this thing of I wandered these journeys through these very disciplines and whatever, but there was a little part of me that was anxious. If your career in physics is doing really well and one day you just say, I'm going to go to art school, some of you, it'd be really unnatural to find somebody who just is that cavalier where they just say, I'm going to give up all of this and do this.
What built up that stress or anxiety of the stress
I think
of wanting
survivability.
Oh, so you saw physics as not a way to sustain yourself, but art was?
No, probably the other way around.
That's what would make sense. So then why would you leave the stability of physics to go into the instability? Because you had a PhD in physics at that point, and you went and just got an art degree. So were you like so set up physically that you, or like financially, that you said, I can afford to go into arts? Or like...
No, I just couldn't resist it.
Wow.
I'd so much, from an early age wanted to do everything.
Yeah.
And I'd spent, a few years doing physics, and it kind of mounted up, and I'd, it was sort of almost like living a double life, where I was going into the physics lab during the day and hanging out with my art friends at night, and I was running out of hours in the day.
Wow.
So I thought, well, I'm going to change, so I'm going to go off to art school now. But I think, like we said earlier, a few people did say to me, this means that you're not taking your scientific career seriously.
But those weren't your parents, because you said your parents
No,
were
my
nothing
parents
but
were
warm
fine. They
accepting.
just said, yeah, you do whatever you want to be happy, which is, I think, really unusual for a parent.
That is, and that must have had a profound... That's the answer that I've been... We started this off, and we're just coming to a close here pretty soon. That's how I kind of... We initialized this once the technology started being on our side, is how did you get to be so calm and have so much equanimity that you do today? And it's coming from a place... Your parents built up faith and trust. You have a rock-hard thing to build
So
up.
that's it, right? Trust is a beautiful thing. And I think it's within us all. As long as someone doesn't come along and destroy it for you. And that's where you've got to be very supportive of people, because I've never had that trust being ruined. But lots of people have.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why you owe it to people to support them and encourage them.
Absolutely.
And certainly don't do something where, you manipulate them, and all of those things. So I've been very lucky.
See, that's so funny. I think a lot of people come from that place, not to extend this too long, but I'm at a place where I'm trying to make it uber like public that I'm like, I'm a tuning fork and I want to be tuned. And so to the point where I'm like, if someone has a piece of information that could help me, help lessen suffering easier, more people, help me further along my path, I'm like, I would be so heartbroken if someone withheld that knowledge from me, you know? But it's fascinating to hear the other side of it. And I'm sure it's a dichotomy where it's a spectrum you can fall on, like you should help everyone, you know? Or
I think you should. The one thing that I've not had is a mentor. You
never had a mentor?
No. So I've been very lucky. I had great parents. I've been super lucky in marrying the person that I love. And I've had some great friends, but I've never had a mentor.
You must have read Surely, Mr. Feynman. You're joking, though.
Yeah, but that's not knowing somebody and actually somebody that you have as a human being. And it's not surprising, right? There aren't many people who are a physicist and an artist. There's not like somebody I'm going to bump into who said, don't worry, Richard, you can go off to art school because I did it and everything worked out.
Yeah.
So I've had that problem that I've never known anybody like me in my life. And I'd say that that's my biggest challenge, that I've had to have the energy in myself to say, oh, don't worry, it's going to be fine.
Yeah. Have you had trouble connecting with people because you said you haven't found people like you? Or you mean like you in terms of physics and art, but there are people like you in terms of they pursue happiness, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, to me, I don't see that much difference. If I sit and I could sit and talk to either of you about something that you're really interested in, and I'd be just happy because I'm talking about what interests you. It wouldn't matter, if you said, hey, I really like 1990s, blah, blah, then I'd say, oh, I wonder why that is. And then I would probably learn from you and go away and say, oh, this is so cool.
That works really well with me because I like just talking over people the whole show. I'm kidding. Yeah. This is a radically different person. She remembers the first time I was on the show. She had to get an edge in word-wise. It was very difficult. I was a talker. You know what is so fascinating, as just almost as a closing topic that we can kind of touch on and then part ways, is I've found to be the exact opposite in my life, where if I'm talking to someone and they're telling me a story, I've just started being as brutal as being, well, that's not true, because the past isn't true. It's true to you subjectively, and that's meaningless to me. You could make up a story, you could tell me a dream. They hold the same value. What's the lesson in it? And that's the signal, and I'm trying to reduce the noise. Not that many people are good storytellers,
But that's what we are in the end. That's all that we are, is storytellers. I don't think it really matters whether it's true or not. And it doesn't, you've got to respect the fact that nobody else is you.
Yeah.
They can give you lots of advice, but it is, and they can be looking after you, but it's their advice based on what they think about you, and only you know who you are. And as long as you learn that, then you're going to be okay in life. But yeah,
it's that easy, folks. Just learn about yourself, which kind of stems from meditating. Have you had?
And you've got plenty of time to learn. Life isn't so much a race unless you've got 50 days till you're 30 and you've got to jump out of that aeroplane, and things get a little tense.
Absolutely.
But once you get over 30 and you're still alive, it's kind of okay again.
Yeah, I profoundly respect and appreciate you taking the time and spending the energy to speak with us, and in the fact that you had such an equanimity about it, that even when the technology wasn't working, you took the attitude that you projected in terms of like, well, it's more about the experience and the intrinsic value of enjoying something. I trust that you would have been perfectly fine if none of this was recorded and I didn't do anything with it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I've really
so
enjoyed
beautiful.
Talking to you about
I love speaking with people like that. That made me so easy. Because just for people, I spent, I think, 23 to 30 minutes just doing that as Ariel talked to you, So
yeah. But you did still record it.
She did. So I appreciate the both of you unbelievably much. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the listeners.
Thank you, Gareth. It's been fun.
Yeah, I'll see you for the next episode.
Yeah.
Golden. That was fun, eh?
Yeah. No, it was.